Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. This is your host Marcy. We have a special guest with us here today. His name is Rick, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Who are you?
Ooh, love it, love it. What's up, everybody? And Marcy, how you doing? My name is Rick Herrera. I'm an actor. I'm a comedian, writer, a very artistic person, musician, lover, friend, father. A lot of hats, a lot of titles, but at the end of the day, I'm just a human being following my journey and you know continue on to finding more purpose in my life and conquering goals and dreams and just living and taking one day at a time.
I like that. Okay. So I always give the comadres a rundown about how I meet my guests. And I just wanted to tell you
I slid in
that,
the DM.
yeah, he did. So Rick and I connected via DM on social media. We both have podcasts, and he has collaborated before with one of my previous guests, which is Jerry Diaz, um, from the Men on Pause podcast. So I thought it would be fun to bring him on. We got to know each other a little bit, and we came up with a topic together. So today's topic is the effects of autism on the family. And one of the reasons why the topic came up is people a lot of time ask me how my family assimilated to my son's diagnosis,
Hmm.
how they work with him, and all of that. So I wanted to pick Rick's brain about that, about his particular experience. But before we get into the topic, I just want to get some of the preliminaries out of the way. And I want to ask you, what is your profession?
Um, well, what I do as my 9 to 5 job that pays the bills and
Yeah,
all that stuff. I'm a project manager for electrical company. Well, yeah, so Snyder Electric. So it's not like it's a great job. I got into it due to my brother because he's big in the electrical field and stuff like that. So straight out of college, he was like, "Listen, I know you got dreams and goals, but you also gonna have bills too. So you're gonna have to learn how to pay them. And I think this would be a good opportunity for you." And I was like, "All right, cool." And I got into it, and I'm grateful to him because in this industry, I kept on learning and picking it up, and advancing in my career. So
that's awesome. So tell the audience a little bit about your podcast. I caught a couple of episodes. I know that you're on there with your wife,
yeah,
but kind of give them like a picture of what you guys discuss or the type of podcast that it is.
yeah. So it's called the Winning Cloud Podcast, with everyday people, all the celebrities, and we interview a lot of people. First thing first, it came out of frustration. I'm not gonna say that, it was something that it was something, yeah, we wanted to do it, and yeah, I wanted to do it from the beginning, but the frustration came out of it because I would reach out to a lot of podcasts to be a guest, and I would not get an answer, and I just felt like, it's either yes or no. You're not gonna hurt my feelings, and I don't gel with so much with this generation of how they don't answer people back either through text, email, just answer. So I literally said, "Can you curse on this podcast?" Because I
Yes.
Okay, so I literally was like, "Fuck you! I'm gonna create my own podcast. I'm not gonna wait around and wait for people to, answer my emails." And I came correct, and I was fan of their podcast. I will listen. So I said, "I'm gonna create my own thing." And I said, "Well," now I'm like, "Well, what is this gonna be about?" Because just because I want to do it doesn't mean like, I gotta have something. So it took me a little bit of time, and I said, "You know what? I feel like in society and in life, we're always looking up to people we don't know. We glamorize celebrities, we glamorize people on social media, but we don't really know them." And I said, "But what about the stories that affected you growing up, like maybe hearing the story of how your mother came to the United States from another country with $1 in the pocket?" I'm like, "That's a story. That person has a story. What about a firefighter? What about the actor that's still struggling to find his place in this world as a creative artist, but he's not getting the shot?" I said, "You know what? That's what it's going to be about. It's going to be about the everyday people because they have a story to tell. Everyone has a story to tell, and I want to hear it, and I want to shine a light on it. And through there, I want to get to know them as well. And I'm a sucker for deep conversation, so I want to make it deep, and I want to make it different. I want to ask questions that make you not only laugh, but also going to make you think about your own life. Like, holy damn. So
Hmm.
told my wife about it, and she says, I love it. I would love to produce it. She came on board, and the rest was history. We started getting a lot of different types of, one episode was just about one of my friends who was in he who sold drugs, was in the gangs all his life, but changed his life once he became a father, and that was his motivation.
Wow.
And ever since that day, I would see him at work, and he would be so proud to talk about fatherhood and his son. So I said, I want you to be in the podcast. And he was like, why me? I said, because you're a father. And that is so key and so crucial in this life. And you glow. He says, but my life is not interesting. I said, it is to me. And I want to be on it. I want you to be on the podcast. So stories like that, I just kept on finding. And, of course, we had celebrities too, which was another thing. It was like, oh, wow, we got people that's in the industry, and to see how humble they still are. So it's just, this podcast just started flourishing. And it was a gift for us. Here we are with the guests would say, man, I learned so much about myself, or I haven't thought about those things, but thank you for this. And I would say, no, thank you, because we also learned from you, and we got reminders and new lessons and stuff like that. So it was a great we're still going. We just took a break, and now we're actually redoing it again. But that's what the Winning Cloud podcast is about. And also learn how to work with my wife. That was one of the first projects that we took on together,
I
you
was
know.
just gonna ask you that. How
Mhm.
was that experience working with her?
It took, and it's overall it's great, but it took some time, because you had to realize early on that when we're working together, we're not husband and wife. We are running a business. We're creating something. So you can't bring, uh, you still got the dishes in there. I say, okay, you can't bring those type of conversations
Hmm.
into, going on the podcast list, guessing, organizing that. So like you couldn't see each other that way. So, and we're both controlling people. So we had to learn when to be in control, when not to, and to learn to trust each other in certain areas, and also recognize our weaknesses and strengths, right? So she handles the scheduling. Um, she wanted me involved as and in the scheduling that. And I said, you know what? You're great at that. So take control of that. You tell me who are the guests when we
Hmm.
do it, and I'll be there and I'll do my research. Like we started finding out things that was uh how we could work stronger together, and not learn and learning to not take things personal, right? So this was new for me. I worked with people, but working with my wife, sometimes, as a couple, you tend to take things differently. Like Marcy, I could tell you something and you won't take it personal because we're friends, where
Hmm.
I could say the same exact thing to my wife and she probably take it a whole different way. And I'm like, I said it with the same tone. So there's been times where I would say things, because me working by myself, I say, Rick, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that, did you check on that? That's how I talk into myself. I would do the same thing to her, and she's like, whoa, 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 first of all, don't be talking to me like that. I was like, wait, how? I'm not talking to you. I have a regular tone. It's like, nah, that tone sounds like you trying to be pushy. I was like, but that's how I talk to myself. So I had to be aware of how I say things now. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because that's how I talk to myself, and I never took that person like offensive or whatever. So it's been great. Like it's been learning curves. We bumped head, but now we're like learning. Still learning, but we found a groove now of like, okay, we know what I like. I know what she likes. I know what I don't like. I know, what I'm saying, back and forth. And we continue on now to create other projects and work with each other.
That's so dope. I was listening to the last episode that you guys published before you went on hiatus,
Mm,
and it was interesting. Like her take on taking on the role of being a co-host now, as opposed to just doing the production piece, and
mm,
how you guys acclimated to it, which is really it's really telling on your relationship. The fact that you guys are able to compartmentalize and still work together, because I know for a fact, like during the pandemic, a lot of people had issues with their relationships and things like that, and the fact that
yeah.
you guys were able to come together and have this, create this, project and have it flourish in the way that it has is really really dope.
Thank you. I think a big part of that, starts from the beginning, right? It starts where how we met each other and how it strictly was friendship, just from the beginning and building that foundation. She didn't want me in the beginning. Like she's in the sense of like I kept on shooting my shot, and she put me in the brother zone.
In the
Then
friend zone.
no, first of all, she put me in the friend zone. Then I graduated to the brother zone. Then the fucking chick put me in the next lifetime zone. So I had to fucking die to meet her again next lifetime to see if we could actually be together. So
Wait.
yeah, so I went through a whole journey, but through that journey we built a foundation of friendship, and then I finally made it through. I came back into this life and made it through.
Oh my god, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's a
Hmm.
good story.
Yeah.
So I did a little research about you. You know, I know Jerry through the Ladies Revolve Salon Chronicles, and
Love that dude.
you know, the fact that he was on my show as well. But I started looking at the web series that you guys were in together, Dad Ruffy, and the thing that I love the most about that series is your vulnerability, both of you guys, how you discuss different issues. Yes, it is, you know, in jest, not in jest
Yeah.
necessarily, but you are, you know, there are jokes and stuff like that, but the topics you cover and the things that you go into are very representative of Dominican culture,
Mm-hmm.
or Latino culture rather.
Yep.
So I want to kind of highlight that as well. Like, can you like talk a little bit about Dad Rafi?
Yeah. It's funny because after a while, like I just like people. It's called therapy because like dads in therapy, right? So it's therapy, but also people call it
Ah.
dadraphy too. And after a while, I just left it alone. Like I let it be whatever people want it to be, as long as they get the message of it, right? Because I can also agree with the meaning of dadraphy too. But the idea came during the pandemic. I was working on my third one man show, and I was writing it. I was supposed to perform it, and then of course, the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, I'm gonna keep on working on it. We're writing this one man play, so whenever we could perform again. And then I had this idea about fatherhood because I'm still knee deep in it, because I was still freshly a father, and I had all these emotions that I was going through too, and then I will go online and I see all this fucking support system, which is great for mothers. Like every little thing, it was like,
Mhm.
is milk not coming out your titty? Girl, come over here. There's a group for that. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like, are you depressed right now? Girl, come on in this group. We got a group. We're
Oh
gonna help
my
you with that.
gosh.
So I'm like, God damn, there is so much support for women. I was like, where is it for the dads? And I will see like maybe one or two page compares to the millions for mothers. And I was like, and I always been the type of person, if I see like a hole in something, instead of me complaining about it, it's like, oh, we need more of that. We need why they shouldn't us out. How about I be the one to start, you know, making shining a light on that.
Mhm.
So I said I'm gonna create a show about fatherhood. That's all I had. And I said, and then little by little, I say, well, it's going to be about not only about fatherhood, about men, right? Because in a lot of things that I do in my comedy and my creations, I want to make you laugh, but I also want to make you think. And I want to use my story so I can connect from it and I can learn from it as well. Now, if I can do that in the process of writing can take me on this journey, then I know it's going to take you on that journey as well because I'm being genuine and it's coming from a truthful place. Um, so I said, I want to talk about fatherhood issues. Now, fatherhood is just not about having a child. It also it will affect you depending on the situation that you had with with your father in that relationship, and that can carry on to your child that you have now. Fatherhood is more than just raising a child. It's also raising that little child within you too, if you haven't let him grow. So I said I want to go deep into that, and now the next thing is I want Latino people of color talking about it. I want to also break that norm of like, yeah, men can be emotional, men can be hug each other. They don't have to be gay. You know what I'm saying? It's not gay to share emotion. I want to show that. Now I'm like, I need a location. So one day I took my daughter to the park and I'm just there and I started noticing that these benches, are empty. And I'm like, yo, I remember growing up, the bench was the spot at the parks. We used to chill, we used to talk, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
no one's using a bench anymore. We're always on our phone or we're being consumed by something. And I was like, yo, that's it. It's gonna be about two men. They meet at a children's park on a bench. That's what's gonna start the conversation. Now, Jerry, prior to this, he was on my podcast and I got to know him. I always seen him around the community of artists. And I always respected what he did, and he was very talented. And in the industry, you always say, "Yo, we should work together." It was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." We always said that. And here's a project which I always loved about him because he's funny, but what I adore is his relationship and his vulnerability with his daughter.
Yes, he has
And
such
him
a good
sharing that.
relationship with Amaya.
And I said, "Yo, Jerry, man, I got an idea, and I think this is what's gonna help us work together." And then I brought it up to him. He loved it. We had many Zoom sessions talking about the project. He would share things with his life. I would share things about my life. I saw a story there. I asked him, "Can I use certain pieces from his life?" And I will bring it to. He said, "Absolutely." And then I started forming this show, and naturally, we started building our relationship live while doing the show too. So yeah, it's a project that I'm truly proud of. My wife was also a director on it, producer on it. That was another project now where we was learning how to work together there,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people helped us out with the funding. Thanks to everybody that did that. But I'm most proud of what we did together to heal our trauma, to relearn from our trauma, um, and the reaction that we got from people saying, "Wow, you guys really got deep, really made me think about my relationship with my father, women and men, and then children too." So it's not about the awards we win, and that's great. We get acknowledged for a lot of festivals, and it's amazing. But what's so touching to me is the feedback that we got from episode to episode, touching a nerve, and people saying what, seeing like, "Wow, like I can relate to that," and it's refreshing to see men talk because I didn't think that exists. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the first episode was where you know one of the dads reflects on the fact that his relationship with his father,
Mm,
like he's acknowledging the fact that he does have a good relationship with his daughter, but he didn't have that relationship with his dad. And he says like,
yeah.
I wish I had a dad like me,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
essentially.
Yep.
And that really touched me because I was like, wow, that's deep, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about women having mother issues, which I've talked about on the show a bunch of times, but men also have father issues as well as mother issues,
Mm-hmm.
um the mother, for me, I feel like mother wound is something that I have been working on, like father
Right.
issues, yeah, but like mother issues as well. And then the thing that the relationship with those like main characters in your life, mother and father,
Mm-hmm.
reflect in all kinds of relationships you have, and it affects things as unrelated as like relationships with your professionally, right?
Yep.
The relationships you have with your bosses or people that you work with, anybody. It literally shows up anywhere. And if you have trauma, like you were saying, it keeps it those are cycles that keep repeating. And doing the work eventually, helps you better your relationships with like everybody else, all
Yep.
human beings, basically. So I really love the fact that you guys took on that project, and I feel like it's actually very wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me know
I'm
what you
gonna make
think
sure
as you
I
keep
link
watching
it.
it.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I link it in the show notes for everybody so that they can get a chance to look it up. So uh let's change gears a little, and
Mm-hmm.
let's talk a little bit about your niece. I know you're
Yeah.
an uncle.
Mm-hmm.
How many nieces and nephews do you have? And I guess share about that.
Yeah, I have about four. Yeah, 4 or 5. I'm losing count because a lot of people had a lot of babies. So, and the reason why I is that our family, we're just naturally separated, not because we hate each
Mm,
other. You know what I'm saying? It's just we are just we have love for each other, but we all have individual journeys. So there comes a time where we'll come in for family gatherings, but that's about it. Or maybe there's a funeral. You know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm,
And then there's certain families members that click more than others, so they see each other. For me, I felt like I was once close with a lot of my family members, and then I had to go live my own journey, and then I had to retrack and learn a lot about life, and let go of a lot of things. And then so then I started seeing them when I was around and stuff like, and just accepted the relationship that we have and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I say that to say that I have nieces and nephews, and I'm closer to some more than others. um and it's just a natural a thing with that. And so I felt like I am an uncle, and but to honestly say, you know, I think one the closest that I've been, like where I felt like maybe I was carrying that title, was when my niece Cheyenne and my other nephew Suki, because I felt like I was in there, like for Cheyenne I was in her life from the beginning, and then as she got older she lived other places, but with Suki I got him where he was like, maybe I was around him, maybe he was around like maybe 9, and then after when I came from college to live with my brother, he was like at that core of 13, 14, 15. So I was in his life at a very like important stage of his life where that the puberty, the being the rebel, figuring out life,
Mm-hmm.
the kids hanging out with the wrong crowd. So I felt like that's when I fully like wore my uncle title, because that's when I was really going through it with him. And then my sister, she has 3 kids, and I felt like I'm an yeah, biologically I am an uncle to them, and I do have like
Mm-hmm.
but my connection is not as strong with them as I would like it to be. Not because we hate each other, it's that she just moved from different place to different place. So I say that because I just don't want to be like, yeah, I'm an uncle, and then try to make it seem like I'm like this amazing uncle that had these amazing relationships. I like to break it down and just be honest. It's like, this is
No,
how I'm
of
an uncle
course.
to different people. Because
So
they could have their own podcast. It was like, he was never there for me. I'm like, you're right, because you was in a fucking other place.
so you were telling me that one of your nieces
Yes.
was diagnosed with autism.
Yes. So, one of my, I think 2 of my nieces were labeled that they was on the spectrum for being autistic. Now I don't know the official diagnostics. Here's how it went down in my mom and my sister's story. So I know my sister, of course, they told her the situation with her kids, and then they tell my mom, and then since me and my mom, we talk, but we don't talk like all the
Mm-hmm.
time. She was like, she told me one day that she's like, oh, Ricky, Brooke, she's autistica. I'm like, what? She's like, no, she's that autism, that autism, she's something's there. I said, what are you talking about? She said, no, she has
Mm-hmm.
something wrong with the brain. I'm like, she's fine to me. She looks like, and like, so my mom didn't really know because she's not from that world either, because back in the days they labeled anyone. They just said he's hyper or he has a lot of energy, whatever. So my mom hears the news from, and my sister probably broke it down to her correctly, but my mom likes to hear whatever she wants to hear and then switch it. And she just looks at it as like, there's something wrong with the brain. I never did anything to look into it further, because in my eyes I don't want to label my nieces or anyone with anything, because to be honest, there's something wrong with everybody's fucking brain. You know, we got something. Everybody got something.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, with the time that I connected with my nieces, you know, I didn't see anything like so crucial to even like maybe treat her different or to see her different. I allowed myself to be in her world. That's a gift, because she's teaching me something that maybe I needed to be reminded, or teaching me something new. I know with some of my experiences with autistic people that they're very creative. Where there's one of the aspects. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a professional. Like I said, I'm still
Mm-hmm.
learning from this too. So when you ask me about would you like to learn, I said absolutely, because I'm open to learn. So my type of form that I was seeing in my nieces, I never went further to see what was the spectrum, what was this and that. I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna allow her to take me to her world, and whatever she wants to show me and wants me to see, I will be there. And then she was interested, the way we would connect sometimes. She likes the guitar, so we would play guitar together, and I would have that moment with her. If that's the only moment that I would have with my niece, then I allowed it and I accepted it. She also now in the stage of likes to draw. So
Wow.
for one of the Christmas, you know I was like, then I'm gonna buy a whole bunch of crayons and pencils and paper. Let that be my part to support this avenue of being creative, because I feel that's
Mhm.
an outlet for her. Not even just because she's on the spectrum, but everyone has an outlet that they need to explore and to do. So this is one of her things. Whether it's more because she needed it because of whatever she's dealing with. I just think this is a way of her to be free and to communicate. Um, so that's a story that
Mhm.
with my niece and no two of my nieces, and that they're artistic. And to me, I never dwelled more into it, not because I don't want to be they don't want to learn about it. I feel like growing up, especially in the Latino community, if you hear the word depression, anxiety, or something, like, they automatically want to say there's something wrong with your brain. And it's not coming from a mean place. It's just that they're just not educated enough to know more or want to or understand. They label it as that, and all of a sudden it's like almost like it's a crippled, and now you're just in that box. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
she's cool or he's cool, but he has this. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to do that with my nieces. My nieces is just my nieces. They're a human being.
I really like that, Rick. So I want to touch on two things that you said.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you tried to like step into her world and really get to know her instead of just like, oh, she has autism and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. That's very important. That we talk about that on the show, kind of using people first language. So people first language is really just acknowledging the person for who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and the diagnosis is secondary, which is what you did, like
Mm.
naturally, which is amazing. Um, and then another thing I want to kind of, I haven't really like gotten into this part of the diagnosis is, the perception of the Latino community for people with special needs.
Mm.
Um, Kind of a lot of the time it's either, and I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna give a disclaimer. Ellos dicen que
Go ahead.
they say like esa gente está loco, tiene un
Yeah.
problema, right?
Right.
They're crazy or they have problems, right?
Yes.
Which is inaccurate, number one, and number two, it's really dismissive, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I know it's not coming from a place of being mean or negative, but it's really I want to say, como se dice, ignorance, a little
Yeah,
bit
it's
of
ignorant.
ignorance.
No, it's not a little bit. It's a lot.
So
Yeah.
we were raised, at least my grandmother understands Aiden now.
Mm-hmm.
She's grandma was born 1936
Right.
in Dominican Republic, and she saw people with special needs, but it wasn't something that they were like interacting on a daily basis, and she didn't really know anybody
Right.
personally that had special needs. So her interacting with my son, it's very different. Like I feel like she was more open to it than a lot of the people in my family,
Mm-hmm.
and her learning how he is, and me telling, and like me teaching her as well,
Right.
has been an experience in and of itself. Like
Mm.
he knows, he's so smart. He doesn't really speak Spanish. Like he understands and he
Yeah.
speaks it to people that he knows that don't speak English,
Mm.
which is funny. So he knows my grandmother doesn't speak English, so he'll
Yeah.
speak to her in Spanish.
That's
He'll be
funny.
like, "Abuelita, quiero un poquito de jugo, por favor," and he's very proper.
Mm.
So I thankfully have had like a very, for the most part, positive experiences with regards to family. I have two brothers that are very supportive, and
Mm-hmm.
my family is different. Like that's another thing. Like I want to sidebar.
Yeah.
Besides that, like that's another thing I want to talk about. Like my family, like we're all up in each other's business all the time,
Yeah.
and like growing up, I'm like, okay, everybody's family is like that. And then
Mm.
as I got older, I realized that, and not every Dominican family has this dynamic of like being intrusive into each
Right.
other's lives, and like constantly being around each other, which
Mm-hmm.
is something that I got used to. But yeah, no, like my, like, we're pretty close knit, and I'm not gonna say that's every side of my family, because I don't necessarily have that relationship with my father's side of the family. I feel like
Yeah.
they're a little bit more kind of to themselves. We still love each other, but we give each other our space, and
Yeah,
everybody has their own thing going on as well.
exactly.
But definitely, like, I feel like the purpose of the podcast is really to educate people. So,
Mm-hmm.
besides like helping parents and giving them resources, I want to educate the community, because I feel like there are a lot of resources, like what you were saying about, for the mothers, right? There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of resources for mothers and helping them with motherhood. But I feel like for the communities of color, there's
Mm-hmm.
no specific groups,
Mm-hmm.
or support groups, or orientation, or something that you can look for when your child gets diagnosed, or to help educate you if you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody in your family that has a special need.
I was gonna ask you, was it challenging or difficult for you with your journey of getting the diagnosis from the doctor, and then actually, because with doctors they're going to recommend a lot of things, right? Because they're just going based from a majority of cases of what this is for a lot of kids, right? But then a big part of it too, I feel, is like you have to get to know your child. So like, let's say they give you 10 things, maybe 5 things will work because you're actually getting to know and understand your child. How was that journey for you, like receiving information from the world and doctors, and then receiving information from your actual son teaching you about himself to you and his world?
Yeah, so uh when he first got diagnosed, I had to actually fight, because he was talking, and then all of a sudden he stopped.
Mm,
So he regressed. Like, he had over 25 words, and then all of a sudden it was like down to like 5 or 6. Um, I had to go to the pediatrician and basically say like, hey, there's something's not right.
mm,
And she's like, no, you should wait. I'm like, wait for what? Like,
mhm,
that doesn't happen. Once you start talking, you don't stop. So, going from that, and then, obviously they recommend all these things,
yeah.
right? Um, I had to kind of be an advocate and really listen to him and who he is as a person,
Mm,
to figure out what things work for him. For example, like some kids, like certain types of therapies.
yeah.
I found that he likes animals, right? So
Mm,
whatever kind of therapy involves animals, I make sure that he's participating in it. So the schools that I picked for him, I made sure they had some kind of therapy animal that they would work with. So the school that he was in for elementary school, they did a program where they did horseback riding.
yeah.
So equine therapy. So he would go like once a week and go ride horses, right?
Mm.
The school he's in now, they bring in a therapy dog every week, and he
Oh,
gets to
that's
hang out with the
awesome.
dog, and that's his thing. Like when he's with animals, he's very intuitive. It's been something like, if there's an animal, he's gonna try to be around it. Like, it's
Mm,
been something that I've learned not to be scared anymore, because he has like
mhm.
this sixth sense, I want to
It's
say,
like
for
it seems
animals.
like he has a gift and a connection with animals, and
He
that's
really does.
um and that's, I said that's dope and that's beautiful, because he's gonna be able to teach you something about certain animals that he's around. Not even like oh, this is a Labrador, or he was born in 19. It's like teaching you something on a deeper level with that animal that he's with.
Yeah, I remember when he was I went on a I because I do these things with my friends, like, and their children that don't have special needs. I like try to bring him around and like have him interact with children that are not on the spectrum, to
Yeah.
kind of have them model like appropriate behavior and socialization skills. And I want to say he was about 5 years old, and we went to the, was it the Central Park Zoo? No, it wasn't the Central Park Zoo. We went to the Bronx Zoo,
Mm,
with my friend Maria and her two boys, and we're sitting there watching the seal show, and he's like, seals have inside ears, and
mm.
and they use their whiskers to find food, and like all these facts, and I'm just
Oh damn.
like, where did you learn all of this? And he's like, and then, like, with him, it's like he says these things, and then he kind of like he'll say it out loud, and then like he'll kind of like be back in his world.
Yeah.
So it's like listening, like really listening to him, because sometimes
Mm.
it sounds, I don't know if you know what scripting is. I don't know if your niece does that, because the thing
No.
is, because autism is a spectrum, not all children do the same, have the
Thing.
same types of behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So scripting is something that children engage in to understand the world. So they repeat either dialogue from shows or movies
Mm-hmm.
or from books to kind of understand what's going on in the world around them.
Yeah.
So he does a lot of he'll do like TV shows, or he'll repeat dialogue from books. But the
Mm.
way that he uses it, it pertains to the situation, so it makes sense
Gotcha.
the way that he's using it. So I believe that was like something from a cartoon.
Mm.
I think it was like Diego, Dora and Diego.
Yeah.
It was like something from like Diego. But yeah, it's been a journey getting to know him and understanding what works for him, and that not everything works. Like I remember one thing I did research was like it was like nutrition. They're like, oh, kids with autism shouldn't have gluten and
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. So I started researching it, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Naturally, he is kind of gluten free, not really, because he has bread like once in a while, but
Yeah.
like that doesn't work for everybody. I remember
Yeah.
as a special education teacher, I had a lot of children that I was teaching a 6 to 1 classroom. So that's 6 students, one teacher, and one
Mm-hmm.
assistant teacher.
Okay.
So it's a smaller setting. It's not like a typical classroom setting, which is 32 kids max,
I remember
right?
growing up, they used to make fun of those classes, and as I got older, I'm like, man, I wish I had those classes because you get more attention, you get more hands-on learning, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, instead of being in a freaking hot box with 40 other kids.
Mm-hmm. It's very different, and yeah. So the 6 to 1 classrooms, like you get more concentrated attention, and those kids really, they really thrive in that. But like what I would see is that a lot of the parents would adopt these new fads, or
Mhm.
these like because they read it somewhere and they
Yeah.
think it's gonna cure the autism. And
Mhm.
that was another thing that I had issues with. There's a lot of people that sell these dreams to parents like, oh, it's gonna cure their child,
Mhm.
but it's not a disease,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with your child. There's actually, if you start looking at it as a gift, then you could start
Hmm.
able to receive it. Don't get me wrong, it's a challenge, right? Because I hear stories, but everything in life is a challenge, but it's a blessing at the end of the day because I feel like they're very gifted. They're very gifted and they can teach you so much. And I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you too, real quick. Did you see the shows on Amazon Prime called As We See It? Um, it's
No, I
about
haven't seen it
it's
yet.
a I think you should watch it. It's about the show about three autistic uh adults. And what I love about it is that when you see a lot of shows sometimes talking about um kids on the spectrum and autism, I feel like that story is always being told from a child level, but you don't see it from a grown level uh journey, and the parents dealing with it, right? Because I feel like one of your concerns, probably as a mother, naturally, you're there for him, you're learning for him, you're taking care of him. He's going to become an adult one day, and then
Hmm.
and then no one's going to beat father time, right? So there's going to be a day, you know, that you're no longer going to be here, and you're going to have concerns. Is he going to be able to take care of himself the way I've been taking care of him? Is he going to be able to flourish in this society that's already going to label him or be against him? And this show touches on that because it's three autistic adults living in an apartment, and they have the parents hired a caretaker, someone that works with them to make sure they're on track and stuff like that. And there is the parents are still involved in their lives. Um, and I don't want to give it away because I thought it was beautiful, and I cried, I laughed because there's a lot of funny stuff that goes on uh dealing with children, and it's natural. Like one of the creators is like, I had to stop feeling bad that I was laughing at my son Adora for when I was learning about him, because it's like at the end of the day, it is funny, and they don't look at it
Mm-hmm.
as like you're laughing at them. They laugh with them, and of course, he when he was creating it too, he said the same thing. Is like having a son and daughter, and when they started getting older, I started thinking about my own life, and like, man, I'm teaching them all these things. I wonder if they're going to be able to hold on to all this information. So I say that to say I think you should check it out, and especially since you're in the journey, and I think it will relate to you even more. And for me, it touched me in a different level because I guess to educate myself more on on autism, and also different stories and how this did, like you said. I think one of the lines that the creator says, like, um, meeting someone with autism is basically trying to say that everyone's have a different version of autism, and that's that. Like, you can't say, oh, I have I know someone that's autistic, and all of a sudden just saying that to say that, like, oh, I can relate to it because I it's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you know one person with it, and that's your person. This other person has another journey with that too. you know you may be aware of it, but you don't know the full journey of this person, because that person is
Mm-hmm.
different from your journey with autism. So I
Yeah.
digress, but I think you should check it out because it touches on what we're talking about, and I thought it was beautifully done, and it made me think about my own life, and having a daughter too, and maybe one day she might be diagnosed with something, right? And how am I going to take it? How am I going to inform myself? Like, how am I going to move? I know I'm not going to judge her. I'm going to have to bring myself into her world and be informed how do you live with this and how you grow with this.
That's one thing. The diagnosis for girls on the spectrum is a little bit, the incidence is lower, but I feel like there might be misdiagnoses because um, the markers for boys are a little bit more noticeable because boys
Yeah.
are supposed to be like more rambunctious and
Mm.
more outgoing. And if you see a boy that's very like to himself, that's like a big like a big red flag.
Okay.
But for girls it's a little bit different. And also um in my research when I was like going to school, they also find that girls are diagnosed at a later age as well.
Mm.
It's not early on. For boys it's like up to 18 months and on, but for girls it's like sometimes it could be up to 4 years
Oh,
old.
damn.
So yeah, so that's another thing to look at. But I like a lot of the shows that have come out regarding people on the spectrum. There's a show, I don't know if you've caught it on Netflix, Atypical.
Yes, my wife was talking about it. I never seen it, but my wife was when we was watching this show, she mentioned that, and she said
Yeah,
she loved that
Atypical
show.
is really good, and like the challenges of a boy with autism. He's in high school and like wants to be independent, but the mom is like hovering and she's not like letting him be his own person. And then the
Mm.
other one is The Good Doctor, which is a very interesting show. Uh, there was another one too, Love on the Spectrum.
Mm.
Um, Pabel actually put me onto that one. So Love on the Spectrum talks about people who are on the spectrum that are trying to find love,
Mm.
and their journeys through dating and things like that. I love the fact that there's a lot of representation, but definitely there was an article I read that not all autism looks like atypical or the
Right.
good doctor. There's different levels to it, and
Yeah.
I've gotten to experience like all kinds of levels. There was students that I had that were like nonverbal, and
Mm.
they had to use a device to communicate, which is it's a challenge in and of
Mm.
itself. But a lot of the time before they get the device, there's some aggression. But
Mm.
I think about it, I wouldn't take it personal, because if you think about it, like if you have something that's going on that you want to
Yeah.
communicate and you can't because you don't have the language,
Mm.
that is definitely like a frustrating
Yeah.
situation to be in.
I think what I dislike sometimes from what I see is just from the world is that we want to put like limits on them. Like, this is as far that they can go, so don't push it. And certain things that I saw, and for me, like, I love seeing shows like that because it shows me, um the capabilities. It shows me different journeys. And also for me, I remember watching a off Broadway play, and what intrigued me in this story was one of the actresses were had Down syndrome, and I was like, wow, look at this. Like, maybe at one point in her life, when she communicated maybe to somebody like, oh, I'm going to be an actress, they
Mhm.
kind of like judged, maybe like, no, I don't think you, like, oh yeah, that's cute, but deep down they probably was like, I don't think you're going to be able to, right? But here she is, like, and this she shared her story on in this play, and I thought it was wonderful. And what I'm trying to say is that, like, this, even with us, right, with no diagnosis of anything, but we all have something, right? And even with that, where we have, our hands, and we can speak, and we have all these verbal capabilities that maybe another autistic person may not have, but we still put limits on ourselves, where they're not even, like, we give them a diagnosis, but they don't see it that way. They're not
Mhm.
judging themselves. You know what I'm saying? They're not pitying themselves, because they still have a journey to figure out, and they're going through it. It's like, well, you figure me out because I already know who and what I am, and I'm still learning about me. And I think that's one thing I don't agree with sometimes, when I see something, like, we try to limit them of what they can do, where they're smarter than us. They
Yeah.
teach us way more. They
Uh,
their world is totally different with the
mhm.
bullshit that we was told and grew up on in society, where they have
Mhm.
none of that. They're pure. And they're, like, they remain pure from the time that they come out, where we was once that, right? And then we dealing with family, the
Mhm.
world, and all this other bullshit that they put on top of us. They remain free from that, no matter how much you try to put that on them.
Yeah, Aiden's very honest. I was talking
Mhm.
about that with Pavel in the previous episode that just came out this week. Yeah, he's very honest. Like, he's not, if he's not with it, he's not with it. He is
Mm.
not
That's
one
awesome.
to be like just kind of like going, along with something just because that's what's expected. He's not
Mm-hmm.
that type of person. And I feel like he's shown me how to be a little bit more authentic and to set limits and not do things that I don't want to do.
That's
Um,
great.
you know what I'm saying? Just because somebody's asking me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. Another thing he's like really into, he's very musical.
Mm.
He's like a singer. He loves to sing, and it's one of the things that you see him kind of, he loves to sing and dance. So that's
Mm.
one of the things that he really likes to, you know, uh show off in school. So like
Mm.
the other day he was actually in the talent show. He decided that he wanted to do a dance from
Mm.
SpongeBob, and he practiced, and they recorded him, and he was like so proud of himself for doing his own thing. And it's really refreshing because a lot of people, like humans in general, we limit ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And we put this fear like people are not gonna like what we do, but it's really, a lot of people don't really,
Mm.
not that they don't care about what we do, it's just nobody's really thinking about it that way. Like, we're really our own worst enemy when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to that kind of
You this
vision.
I agree with you 1,000,000%. And you're taking me back of this beautiful memory that I had, where, as an artist, we study ourselves, we study the craft, and we study other people that we see on stage, right? I think the most lessons that I ever received wasn't from actors or shows, or even watching my own stuff on stage. I have a spiritual teacher that I go to that helped me with my life, and her name is Guru Enlightenment. And to take responsibility for a lot of things, anger, pain, and pointing, being the victim and pointing the blame on everybody. She helped me a lot figure, find the answers and find my truth and heal from that. And I say that to say, she adopted uh, a boy that has a mental disability, but she never
Hmm.
raised him that way. She allowed him to, be with other, people that quote unquote were didn't have any disabilities, right? But he went to a school, um, that he was around all kids that had all different types of mental disabilities, and issues and challenges that they had. And every year, they used to do a play, right? Now you had kids there that were verbal. You had kids that were very verbal. You had kids that couldn't stand still. You had every type of child that you want to say that they're different. They was in that school and they was in this play. So she will invite her students. She said, if you guys want to come, also I built a relationship with him. His name is Jonathan. Um, he's an adult now. I met him when he was like 14. Now he's like 22, which is crazy. But anyway,
Wow.
I seen him. I seen him. Went to go see his play. They was doing Grease, and also his other brother Chris was in it. Um, so I say that to say that I saw every type of diagnosis, whatever challenge, whatever disability. I saw all that in this play, but that didn't stop them to act, to be themselves, to remember the lines, the teacher sharing the journey of how they got them to dance, sing. I got so teary eyed because I was like, and here I am, because I was also preparing for my own show. I said, and here I am, probably freaking out about the littlest things in life or freaking about certain things and being worried about my show if I'm going to remember certain things. And these kids just did a whole hour play where they had
Mm-hmm.
all these challenges that they was dealing with eternally to remember maybe a word. And I got so teary eyed that's like, I want to be like them. I want to be free. I want to be free like them. And I said, because that's what they showed up there. They was fearless. And even if they fucked up on the line, they kept going. And even if, everyone participated in their own way what they could. And I thought it was so inspirational. And it goes back to touching on that, like, we as humans put limits on us, but here they are not putting any limits on themselves. They may know that maybe they're a little different, or maybe they learn differently, but that doesn't stop them to learn. And I left that show like so inspired. And I'm like, I remember I
Mm-hmm.
took a picture of all of them because at the end they all got together to say, smile and cheese. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember I took a picture of that, and then I printed it out and I framed it on my job so I could always, and I wrote believe. And I always will always look at that picture because it reminded me of the lessons that I learned that day, to never put challenge in yourself and to keep going.
It I had the privilege of working in a school. So I don't know if you know, Rick, but there's like a specialized district for kids that need smaller settings, right?
Mm,
So children that are have disabilities that need a particular school. And those are part of a specialized district here in New York City, and that's
mm,
called District 75.
mm,
So as part of District 75, as a special education teacher, I worked at this one school which I love, and I'm gonna shout them out. It's P94.
mm.
So P94 is
Was that like in the Lower East Side?
yeah.
I
So
think I
it's
was.
called the Spectrum School. And they have different little sites all over, like the Lower East Side, around that area. And they put on this show. It's called the Stars Performance, right? Every year the kids get together, they practice, they learn their lines, they do either like one of the ones that they did Aladdin,
Mm.
another one they did
Maybe that's the one that I went to. They did a Grease one. I know they did Grease.
and it might have been what, how many years ago was this?
Just had to be like 4 years ago, around that time.
Yeah, so yeah, so that school goes from like pre-K, well, not pre-K, from kindergarten all the way. They have kids up to 21 years old.
Mm.
They put on Aladdin. Another one I saw, they wrote their own play at
Mm.
another site. Um, the kid and the kids are so talented. So
Mm-hmm.
this school was particularly caters to children that are on the spectrum, but all like love arts,
Mm.
because not every kid on the spectrum likes art. There's
Yeah.
kids that are like into science, they're into math, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is specifically for children that love art. And the way that those kids dedicate themselves to practice
Mm-hmm.
and just execute, the the play and stage directions, and not everybody's on the stage.
Yeah.
There's kids that have a job like
I saw that.
making the costumes, or directing people or greeting people, and it's like kind of playing into their strengths and what they're really good at. And at the end, like they're so proud of themselves. They actually made a movie. I'm gonna get you the name of the movie.
Yeah, send me that.
But they made a movie about the show. They were able to go to another state and perform at a big conference. So it's just so beautiful, and the fact that we can take so many lessons from them. And I wanna kind of end the show saying this: it's they can do everything that we can do. They just do it differently. So I read something somewhere that they have all the same wiring. I mean, they have all the same connections as us. They're just wired differently.
That's very
So that's something that we we can keep in mind. And being more tolerant and more accepting of people is like, that's one of the things I keep drilling on the show. Like, it's important. But Rick, I thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. This is very different for me and was great. I love it.
I'm glad. As always, I'm gonna end the show how I usually do, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod on IG, and Rick on IG at
RH Comedy.
Okay. His profile on IG has all the links to the shows that he's been in, and his work. But I'm also gonna include that in the show notes. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram. Email me at comadreando@escthenetwork.com, or slide up into my DMs like Rick.
Yeah, it works. It works. I mean, you might get left on scene sometimes, but hey, you never know. You never know. All it takes is one DM.
All right. Thank you for spending time with your comadre and your compadre. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Hello. Hello, comadre. Hey, comadre. Do you have a minute for comadre time?